Hold on to your seat, folks, because today we're bringing you a powerhouse, and she knows how to turn life's curveballs into game changing relaunches. Hilary, she's an award winning peak performance coach, business strategist, mindset master with a mission to help midlifers reignite their spark and soar to new heights. As the founder of Relaunch.co, Hilary's groundbreaking 3HQ method aligns your head, your heart, your highest self, has transformed countless of lives and businesses. But wait, there's more. She's a three-time international best-selling author, co-host of Wake Up with Marcy and Hilary, and the voice behind the globally top-rated Relaunch podcast. Her insights have been featured on ABC, Secret Millionaire, Forbes, US Today, and more. Recently named one of the Lifestyle's top 10 impact-driven leaders of 2024, next to Mel Robbins. Hilary's legacy includes everything from academia as a Cal Poly board member to being knighted for her groundbreaking work. If you're ready to ditch the nuts and bolts of business and you're ready to relaunch like your boss, Hilary's got the roadmap. Let's dive into this epic conversation and get inspired to make your next chapter your best chapter.
Welcome to Power Your Profits podcast, your friendly guide in bringing your business revenue to the next level. Listen as host Dr. Susie Carter hears inspiring stories of success from her fellow entrepreneurs and transformational leaders. Prepare to make significant change to your strategies as they unravel the secrets of building multi-million-dollar businesses and the most effective tips on finance, marketing, and sales accountability. If you want to take your first steps towards explosive business growth, this podcast is for you. Without further ado, here is your host, Dr. Susie.
Okay, Hilary, I want you to spill the tea on your 3HQ method, because what's the magic behind aligning the head, the heart, and the highest self?
Okay, so first off, I love that you said spill the tea because I'm a tea drinker. I've never drank coffee. And that you are the first person who has ever asked me that in that way. I don't do coffee dates or coffee chats. I do tea. So anyway, let's talk about 3HQ and why it is important for the people listening. No matter where you are with your revenue, no matter what you're trying to do with profit margins, this is a concept that you must be using in today's world. So if you think about 3HQ, HQ is the headquarters of you, and the 3 H's are your head, your heart, and your highest self. Now, where did it come from? It came from in the 60s, 70s. It was all about IQ, very much head-based, very much left brain-based. And I do a lot of neuroscience. So I have a psychology degree, been studying this stuff for 15 plus years, coaching for almost 25. I only do what I have seen work over and over. So if you think about IQ and working entirely from the left brain, and you realize, especially if you've been in corporate, I worked in Silicon Valley at Oracle for almost 10 years, that we were conditioned as women, especially men too, to act in a certain way and to go with the processes, to go with the steps, the procedures. Well, soon enough, those things started to change. And in the 90s, it became all about EQ, emotional quotient, and how emotional savvy are you, and how are you a leader? And we've tried to work in these silos and then tried to bring them together, and it's just been a complete bust. Sheryl Sandberg came out with Lean In 2003.
Yep.
Yes, over 20 years ago. Crazy, crazy. And
wait, 20 years ago, I guess so, right? That's bananas.
Isn't it? I mean, honestly. And so what has changed? How about everything? Everything has changed because we've had what I call relaunches. I'm the CEO of the Relaunch, and everything has changed from your personal side, from growing up in this era. Perhaps you're a midlifer like I am, 45 plus. And then you have to start thinking about personal life. You know, maybe you've been through a divorce like I have. You've had parents both die. You've had like health issues, melanoma. I mean, all these different things. Life changes. Relaunches happen. And so what I realized when all of these things were happening is that the old way of doing things with IQ and EQ and lean in, they weren't going to cut it. It wasn't going to help me in my business, in my personal life. I need to like kind of put everything in a blender, mix it all up and see what comes out. And what came out was this concept, 3HQ. And when you get your head and your heart working together, and then that will allow you to get out of your head, tap into your heart. And we're going to talk more about the heart and how powerful it is, which most people don't even realize. That will allow you to access your highest self. And what is the highest self? The highest self is the best version of you. When you are operating in your zone, like things are just going so well. But we've all been in the zone, and then something happens to actually derail us out of the zone. And you're like,
It's
what?
that minutia in business you got to do, right? You're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, you have like one great quarter and then the next is terrible. Or you have, like you got 3 clients coming in and then you're just dried out for another 6 months. And so in creating the 3HQ, I realized the power behind it because it actually merges in neuroscience, it merges in ancient wisdom, and this new age of personal development. So it's kind of like putting everything that we've known and saying, all right, old way, new way. How are we going to leverage this in today's world?
Well, I think I love that because, we learned in the 80s and the 90s, like I literally I had really short hair because I was trying to be the man, right? And the blue suit and the red accent. And like I was just trying to fit into this world of business. And I remember when I'm like, wait, I could wear feminine clothes on stage. Like I could have my hair long again. I could wear like red lipstick. I don't have to be neutral Nancy anymore. I
I,
can cry on stage.
I remember when I worked at Xerox before I worked at Oracle. And when I first started, they made you wear skirts. Women could not wear pants. And we had to wear them no more than 2 fingers above your knee. And within about 5 months, they gave us the ability to wear pantsuits. I'm telling you, everyone in the office wore a pantsuit the next week. It was like, we're
Thank
done.
God, right?
We're done with this.
And pantyhose. What?
I mean, pantyhose. When was the last
Right?
time I put a pair of
Back in the
pantyhose?
day. Back
Oh,
in
I
the
do have to say, pantyhose that allow for a little of that, tucking in. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of pantyhose.
Yes.
I'm not.
We've all reinvented it.
We
So
really,
let's talk about, well, I think of what I love, building 7, 8 figure businesses myself, who's coaching the coach, who's keeping you aligned. And it seems so obvious, but it's not. When you're in the grind of how you've done it, you're in the grind of managing people, managing team, managing monies, it is very masculine. And to say go into your heart, it's like, oh, I think that's what makes me a little unique on stage is I do come heart centered first. It's just in my DNA of, love and light. It just comes, which I love, right? Channeling into that higher self of, I call it God, other people call it whatever they want, where people go, oh my God, say that again. I don't know what I said. I was in my higher self. I can, you got to go back and watch the recording or go watch.
are in the zone. And how
Yeah,
many?
I don't know what I said. It's just channeled.
But what I mentioned earlier, and I do want to touch on this, is that a lot of people don't realize that the heart is as powerful, if not more, than the head. And
Yes.
when you break it down and you look at it scientifically, there have been, I'm going to tell you a quick story because I found it so fascinating. There are transplants, heart transplants. And there was one done with a young girl. And when she woke up and she got better, she remembered a series of crimes, of murders that she knew vividly where it happened. And what they realized, and she had every detail, that the heart that she got was actually a serial killer's heart. And she was able to pinpoint so many of the bodies that nobody
My
else could ever.
God.
And so what's going on there is that we are starting to realize that as the head is so powerful, the heart is too. You've heard of like, the gut. I've got that gut feeling. Well, guess what? We're also realizing the gut. There's
Right.
different places in our bodies. So when you start to look at head, heart, highest self, and I too am a, God-loving woman, but there's some things that are universal, spiritual, that are like, connection points with people who aren't necessarily, in the God world, but they
Right.
understand there's something bigger than they are.
Right.
And this is where I like to say, as you said, I'm willing to get up on stage. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to cry. I'm willing to let people in. And that is where 3HQ becomes this like, and it's alignment code. It's a
Mhm.
code, but unless you have the keys to get the code right, it's like a garage
Right.
door. If you don't know the code, that garage door is not going to open. And so there's codes and keys for the head, the heart, and the highest self. And when you know it and you can use it in your business, in your personal life, that's when, we talk manifestation. That's when things happen and they happen faster than you've ever thought, because
Yes.
it's not just this like think it and it will happen. It's like
Right.
it's putting, have you ever been to a acupuncturist and all of a sudden they put the zinger little things on that zing it, like they give you the electrical, you're like, woo, it's like that. It's like putting that extra like wah 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 onto it. And that's what we all want to do, especially as you've said, if you're 7 figures, 8 figures. I mean, I've worked with people that have sold their business for 250 million, and they come to me and they're miserable and they're about to get a divorce and their kids aren't talking to them, and they thought that they wanted to sail around the world and then realized they don't even like sailing. I mean, we do things, we put ourselves on paths, not because of our heart, but because of our head and what we thought about that direction.
Well, I think as business women, we had to learn to be so masculine. And now we're saying come back to the feminine, which is like, it is a deprogramming of what we've spent 20, 30 years creating to go, oh man, I knew it. I could have been in this the whole time. So talk about your tune-in process, because I think that's part of it, right? Is
It is.
like you go from F to, having a life that is amazing. I remember being in Italy and I was on a couchette journaling, right? And I'm like, I want to travel with my girlfriends. And then I'm like, I've been working so hard, I don't have girlfriends. I need to find girlfriends who have money that can travel, right?
That's exactly it.
So
Here.
talk about that tune-in process and how do we tap in to that tune-in process?
Well, and I'm so glad that you said, because it's all about clarity. We
Mm.
need such clarity because then you can plan around it and then you can have that accountability to make it happen. But without that clarity. And so what I did is that tune in and the 3HQ process is there, like you said, the tune in process is your silver bullet. It's your fast. Everybody wants something fast and quick, and I need to do this right now. The 3HQ process does take time to learn it. It does. I mean, to change and rewire your brain, it's 62 to 67 days. Don't kid yourself. You can't do it any shorter. That is, again, that is something that scientifically we know that in order to break away limiting beliefs, it will take that long. But that doesn't mean everything is hopeless. What it means is that how can we, when we are having relaunches, when things are happening, how do we continue to go to work? How do we continue to live when all you want to do is get on the couch and flop there and say, my life is so hard right now? When your business isn't doing what you are wanting it to do and you feel stuck, how do you elevate yourself? And everything is energy. Everything. Emotions are energy. And when you're feeling like, I just don't want to do this, I just don't have the strength to do this, I just feel stuck, I feel overwhelmed, I feel underwhelmed, tune in is your instant fix to get you back into your seat, onto the Zoom, onto the stage, into the negotiation, whatever you need, into planning out your next quarter in your business, it allows you for small amounts of time to elevate your energy. And what does that really do? When you elevate your energy from low energy, you go from attracting low energy things, which are not in your orbit of trying to get to 7, 8, 9 figures. You then can pop yourself up to a higher level of energy for that short amount of time. So that right before I came onto your show, Susie, I tuned in. I went ahead and I said, what am I really trying to do? I elevated my energy because my last call, it was a client and there's a lot going on. So if I brought that energy into your call, or into your show, you'd be like, this is really fun. This is really like, she's really bad. I'm never having her back. So tune in is 4 steps. And again, entirely to get your energy level higher so that you can attract what you're ultimately going for in whatever you're about to go do in a very short amount of time. So the first step and I'd love to take you through it. It's actually the easiest way, Susie, I can share with you.
Yes, let's do it.
And it's a little coaching involved. So, if
That's
you're
okay.
Okay, so what I want you to think about is what is the biggest challenge that you have right now in your business? Biggest challenge.
Is really deciding the next. Like I've been doing this for 40 years, right? Want to play a different game, same game, but different, bigger. And it's really going, what in this completion season, legacy season,
Relaunch season.
relaunch season, what is the next?
I love that. What is the next? So we now have identified a challenge, and it could have been an intention. I want to get on this podcast and I want to impact, people. I want them to hear the story. Okay. It could be anything because challenges don't have to be negative either. So
Yes.
yours is, what is the next? What's the next big thing for you? So that's step 1, absolutely in your head. That it's all in your head, because if it were already done, if you already were well on your way, it wouldn't be a head thing. All right.
Yes.
So now we go to step 2, and step 2 is what I call change the channel. And the way we change the channel is very much neuroscience based. And we use a power song. Music plays a huge amount in elevating your energy and changing your state. So what I want you to think about is, what is a song that when you hear it, Susie?
This on fire.
This girl is on fire. So the big thing is you have to sing it or hear it in your head. And there is no difference. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between hearing it and hearing it outside of the brain. And I need you to hear it for 20 seconds. I need you moving your body, changing your state. This is step number 2, which gets you to the highest self, best version of you, energetically. So let's go ahead. This girl is on fire. I want you to move your body 20 seconds. This girl's on fire. You're hearing that chorus. You got it going on.
I'm singing it in my head, y'all. So if you're like, why is she quiet? Because you do not want me to sing. That is not my talent.
You are moving, and it already is impacting you, okay? It is changing at a cellular level. So now we go on to step 3. We tune back into our power song. This girl is on fire. And now the best part of this is we're creating a mini movie in our mind of you on a stage where you are sharing with your audience. They are looking at you. They are hungry. And what you're sharing with them is, what is the next? Here's how I figured it out. Here's what I did. This is the greatest process ever. And they're looking at you like, oh my God, you are the words of wisdom. You are like the wise woman. And I want you to see yourself on that stage. I want you to see the faces. And what color are you wearing? What color?
Red.
Red. I want you to intensify that red, hear the song, see the people. You're giving everything you've got. And how are you feeling right now?
Fabulous, hot, sexy.
So I want you to 10x that. I want you to intensify everything around color, around you. They are like, give me more of that, Susie. I want more of what you're saying. So now we go into step 4. And step 4, and by the way, this whole thing takes no more than 2 minutes to master it. and it will make every bit a difference. It is my number one peak performance habit that I teach people, whether they are startups or whether they are IPOing their company. Everybody has to become a master of this, and it can happen right now with everyone listening. So now that step of being on the stage was actually heart-based. We felt it. We were there. We were helping people. Now we move into the fourth stage. And that one is your micro pop. When you are elevated, you have better answers to your questions. So now I would ask you, in order to get to what is that next, what would you say is a micro step that you could take right now, right after we Success Like Speed, right after our call is over, right after our show is done? What could you go do to get you one small micro pop, these pops like pops of champagne? What could you do? And I like you're still moving. You're still, this girl
Still on fire. I'm still on stage. I'm still in hot red with a cape.
I like it. Hey,
Cape
I like
jacket.
it.
I got my cape jacket on. Okay, this is going to sound like it's a setup, but it's not a setup. I just want everyone to know I'm not saying this is a setup. It's, Hilary has this mastermind that we did a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm in, and then I had to go to another call. So my micro step would be I'm in, because it's around women like us, 7-8 figure business women that are really looking at, and I just got chills, right? What's the legacy play? What's that? And when I first met Hilary, relaunch, I'm like, I'm not relaunching my business. And then I realized I went to an event with her, a month ago. And I'm like, oh, it's not about relaunching your business. It's relaunching you in this new season. Because I've been saying I'm in a new season. I don't need to work like I was working. Like we get in this rat race of the hand on the wheel. And I'm like, I don't need to do that anymore. I've set up my life. I've done well. I've planned. And so when we were in LA, Santa Monica, I was like, oh, this is the message of relaunch isn't about relaunching another business, right? Because that's head dreadful. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, this is the season of taking all the gifts that God gave me, right? I believe my gift from God is my life, and my gift back to God is what I do with my life. And so that what is that next that is not that linear structure, put a funnel together.
That's it.
And I promise you, this was not a setup. She did not set me up for this. That was
no. And what is so great is that you just said we have named our event the big September event. You just went to the one in October, and we have one a year that's the big, and we're calling it Relaunch Her, because that's it. Relaunch her beauty. It's relaunch her supplements. It's relaunch fashion, business, life in all different ways, relationships, and that's it. I mean, you just you nailed it. So now when you look at Tune In, I want you to think about this. Tune in. I want you to think of and everybody listening, it's not just this one song, This Girl Is on Fire, and you use it for everything. Susie, you may have this for when you're really feeling like there's business issues. This Girl Is on Fire might be your song, but there might be a different song when you are with your family or when you're wanting to be creative. I have 5 songs that are my go-to songs that I constantly, and they fall right into the buckets of what I'm going to do. So for instance, getting on your show today, my song that I always do for inspiration is I Am Woman, Helen Reddy. I know you guys old school. I'm an old school girl, and I got this new modernized approach to things. It's the funniest thing because people are like, that's your song? It is when I want to be inspiring. It is,
I own your femininity and own that power. Yeah.
I am invincible. That's a line in there.
You're listening to another episode of Power Your Profits podcast. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Overwhelmed by the complexity of business profit strategies? Jump aboard the Bullet Train to Big Profits course, a streamlined solution by Dr. Susie Carter. This course is designed to uncomplicate the path to profitability. Imagine being able to identify and execute profit strategies with ease, skyrocketing your revenues. Visit course.poweryourprofits.com and sign up for the Bullet Train to Big Profits course today. Are you tired of pouring resources into strategies that don't work? Say hello to Dr. Susie Carter, your future fractional COO. With Dr. Susie in your corner, your business can skyrocket to 7 figures and beyond. With a track record of creating thriving businesses, trust that you are in good hands. Head over to coo.poweryourprofits.com and let us put some magic into your business growth.
And you mentioned something else. So that is the tune-in process. Let me just quickly review. Step 1 is always about your challenge or your intention, and you are clear as you possibly can be. Step 2 is all about changing the channel, elevating yourself, getting back into the highest self. Step 3 is about that mini movie that you're creating where you are like owning the opposite of the challenge and you're sharing how you did it. And then you've got the color and you've got the emotion. And then step 4 is those micro pops. And here's what I want to do. I want you to wrap it all. As soon as you do a tune-in process, you pop the champagne. Not literally, figuratively, whatever you want to do, actually. Whichever is the easiest. If it's like something you're like, woohoo, you could do either. I've got little pops of champagne bottles with bubbles in it. And every once in a while, I'll be like, yes, I did it. Nice. But I want you to do that because, again, neuroscience, if you start to acknowledge your wins, and there's a whole lot of hormones that are released, there's a whole lot of what I call your daily dose, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins throughout the whole process I just gave you, and you don't even know about it yet. And what I want you to be thinking is popping the champagne where you acknowledge that small win. What it does is it stimulates in your brain something called the RAS, the reticular activation system. And it's like, how many of us, when we go to buy a car, we see the car everywhere? That's what I'm talking about. That's what we want to do, is stimulate it enough to whatever you're going for.
Yes.
So now you're going for, hey, what's next? What is next? All of a sudden, you're going to be like, oh my God, I could do that and that. And then you and I are going to have to talk again because there's going to be so many opportunities for you. We've got to narrow it down to the right one because you have so many things that you could go do.
I love that. It's so great. And I love the little bottles of champagne, right? To go, let me just pop it because I had a good day. Be popping it every day.
See?
Good. Well, I love it because I wrote down, I'm always taking notes. What's your celebration mechanism, right? That allows you to, because we don't, right? We talk to our students about it all the time, is we just go to the next, the next, the next, the next. So
Yeah.
Now, is that part of the 5-step system for the relaunch effect?
So the relaunch effect is different. So you're going to be like, you nailed everything. You're bringing everything into this so that everyone's going to know all the different things I teach. But it really goes with 3HQ is think of it as one of the alignment codes, the codes to it. My pillars are head, heart, highest self. But above that is something called the relaunch effect. Okay. And the relaunch effect is something that you can do whenever you are having something that is out of your control. All right. So somebody gets sick, you end up getting a diagnosis that you're like, oh my God, what do I do? And there is a process, 5-step process that I take people through. And the first step is you just literally, you release the fact that you have it. Because what do we do when we hear something terrible? We store it up inside of us. Instead, to acknowledge it, to be able to say, I know that this is happening right now, that there is a form of releasing it. The second, which is so important that so many of us have a tough time with, especially as we get older, is the resilience. It's the bouncing back. We let things kind of bring us down, like, oh, this happened and then this happened. I mean, how many times have you said, like, not you, but people in general, like, oh my God, when's it going to stop? Like, I got this and I got that. we need to have the resilience, that bounce back ability. So the second step is resilience. The third step is when you actually have an opportunity to redesign. And this is building what you ultimately want from what's happening in your life. So when my mom passed, she was my rock. She was my like best friend. All the women in my family lived into their hundreds. And all of a sudden, my mom's diagnosed at 77 with stage 4 cancer. And I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. But
Right.
I also have to realize that in my mind, that was a complete breakdown of my own stories around what I thought would happen with me. I'm living to 100
Right.
or past it. And all of a sudden she passes at 78. And I'm like, oh my God, where I thought when I turned 50, I have, I have another half of my life to live. All of a sudden I'm like,
Right.
what if I don't? What if I
Right.
have another quarter, another third of my life? So there's this redesign that you need to be able to do. And I teach it so that you can start to go through these very quickly. But stage 4, or step 4, not stage 4, that was mom. Step 4 is when you literally rewire. And I mentioned earlier that the rewiring is you got limiting beliefs. We have things that we've been telling ourselves since we were little, girls, little boys. It's usually, below the age of about 8. And we need to rewire because at this point in our life, it is what's holding you back. It is what's causing you to have, that idea of I'm not good enough, the imposter syndrome, all of that. And so you have to be willing to do the work around rewiring. And I've done my whole thing is that you got to have fun even when you're doing the heavy, lifting.
Yes.
So I created a process around that. And the last is when you reclaim. And this is reclaiming and sustaining. Remember, we talked about the energy. Instead of being on a relaunch roller coaster, up and down and up and down, you're able to realize that roller coasters always flatten out as well before they go up again, before they go down, before they do the little rollers. And so, what we want is this idea of being able to look at things and ride, because as we get older, more and more relaunches are going to come. So the relaunch effect is really release, resilience, redesign, rewire, and reclaim. And when you realize you can use this process for business, for your personal life, for your relationships, it's almost like, again, I mentioned this earlier, it's like you're being handed the keys to unlock something that's been locked up and you're kind of like trying to figure out the code and couldn't. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to go through the relaunch effect. And what happens is the reason I named it the effect is because it affects all areas of your life when you even do it in that one area that you're working on. It like literally, they say your business is a direct reflection of you. Well, guess
Yes.
what? You are your personal self as well. You are all of the different areas that make up you. And that's where the relaunch you comes in, which it was so great. I'm like, that just is a sign to me because we decided on this just, in the last week that that's going to be the name. I'm like, yes, because that's what we as women, as we stay relevant, as we continue to move into midlife, we need.
Well, what's interesting is, I always try to, how does this work in my life? I always tell my students and clients that it doesn't have to be hard, it has to be systemic. And so, we do that with business, but what about in personal? And so I had something that I had to have acknowledge it, resiliency around, and I was in the redesign, which is, sometimes you just ghost people, like I'm just going to give up on it. You can't, go non-contact. I go, but that's not what I want. And so it's just another framework to go, oh, okay, well, let me redesign it. What do I ultimately want versus I don't have to be in reaction to the situation, right? I can be in charge of the situation. Let me redesign it, then rewire it, and then reclaim it for that relationship, right? It's
Let
with
me
love.
give you a funny story.
Yes,
It
sorry.
doesn't start out as being funny, but it is funny. So I got divorced. I had 3 little kids, and I knew I wanted to have a relationship again, a meaningful one. I wanted to get married again. Like I knew that. And I thought when I got divorced, I'm like, couple of years, I'll be remarried, no problem. Well, the years went on, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on with this like dating and I call it relaunch love. So I went and I became a certified matchmaker. And I was so intrigued with how people fell in love and how you could match someone. Well, it ended up that I did find love again. I've been with Eric now 11 years, 9 years married. And the best part is that I took what I learned in matchmaking and I now teach that not just for if somebody is interested in finding the love of their life, but in relationships, getting away from toxic relationships, bringing in the healthier ones. I often hear people say, Hilary, you know what I really want this next year as one of my goals? I want to be in a group of like-minded women. And I'm like, how about something even better? Like energy women. Like, let's bring you in to people that are going to lift you up, not just think like you, like really be powerful. And so this matchmaking, it's now like someone said, well, you're the success matchmaker. This is what you're doing now. And I'm like, yeah. And I use 3HQ. I use the head, the heart, and the highest self. And I believe that it literally can work for every single person. I mean, it can. I've seen it 1,000 times over. It's powerful.
Well, yeah, if you just be present to what is it and then just go through the process. Like I was present just because I like to learn and I'm a great teacher because I'm an amazing student and to go, oh, how do I take this situation that's hurting my heart and go, how do I not ignore it? Because I think we do that as business women. Let me just put it over here and I'll deal with it. And if we don't deal with it, it just festers, like a splinter.
Does. And there's a whole, and you're gonna find this out in the mastermind. I'm gonna do a whole bunch of this. Is there's something that's like legit with gender intelligence? I
Yeah.
mean, there are things you must know. Our brains are literally like if you cut your brain in half, a man and a woman, our brains are different inside. And it means that we show up differently. You need to lead them differently. You need to manage them differently. I mean, even my boardroom, I spoke to women differently than I spoke to men. Although I only had one woman in my boardroom, they were mostly men. But it's really fascinating when and I love that you're a learner. I'm a learner. I think that that's who I attract is, growth-minded people. But when you realize that there is such power in some of the things that we've overlooked, like neuroscience and ancient wisdom. People will be like, ancient wisdom, what the heck? What is that? And I'll be like, do you ever use the law of gravity? Well, yeah, every day. So I'm being pushed here. Well, what about the law of resonance? What about the law of cause and effect? It's like, what? Like, imagine understanding the 12 laws and being able to incorporate them in your personal and your professional life. Wow. It's like having
Right.
another handbag of all the most incredible tools you could ever ask for. That's what, kind of I like to do with 3HQ. You bring them all together.
So talk about what do you see as the common mistake? Because you work with 7, 8, 9 figure business women. What do we make, these women, me, right? That we make and then we try to relaunch our lives and how do we avoid it? Like what's the biggest mistake?
So the biggest mistake, when just to make sure I'm clear on what you're asking, the biggest mistake that women make when they're trying to relaunch some aspect of their life, whether it's relationship, whether it's a new career, is that I started with this and I'm going to end with this. It's it's really tough to see our own blind spots. It's really tough to get down to the clarity of it without really having someone pulling it out of you. Because if you're not overly clear, and I'm going to give you a great example, I had a woman come to me and she had actually been let go from a company by the board. And there was, it was tech. And at that point, very few tech jobs available. And she was, I'm never going to find a job. There aren't any, and I don't want to travel. I've got kids, blah, 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 all these different things. And she just kept putting limitations down, limitations, limitations. And I just said, stop. Clarity. What would you really want? She's like, but there aren't any out there. And I said, how many jobs do you need? She's like, what? I said, how many jobs? How many careers? How many do you need?
Right.
One,
One. Yes.
one, one. And I have to say, it was, 2 months later, she landed the most incredible job, more money, more this, more that, because she did 3HQ. She tuned in every single day and she was super clear. So we put the plan together around tuning in on when she was going to do it, how often she was going to do it. And then I was there to keep her accountable, right? Hey, are you doing it? What's happening? What are some of the wins, the popping champagne moments? And boom, it happens. And this is not something that is like a one off. This is like, I mean, it just happens over and over. And so I think women get kind of, and I had another call this morning. Women get caught up in, the, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I need to make money. I need security. But I don't have it. And that we lose that calmness of when things can actually happen for us. And we get further and remember energetic, further and further down on the chain. And what I do is I help get you back to a higher place so that law of resonance, what you want, because we've gotten super clear, is what you're resonating with in the outside world. And you are a master machine. You are the supercomputer of the world. We just don't tap into what we have inside of us to be able to manifest and create the lifestyle of success.
Right. And I think there's that conversation of, does this work? Is it hokey? And if you've been in this work for a long time, it does. We just forget and we get busy. And that's why there's beautiful women like Hilary in the world to get us realigned and grounded. Right. So talk about Her World International and empowering women globally. How does this global movement compare to launching your high powered Silicon Valley career?
Really interesting because I was doing what I am teaching now before I knew how to describe it, right? I was kind of like, people would say, well, how are you doing this and how are you building up your career? And I have always believed that, there's this common phrase in the US, it's like, think locally, act globally. And it's like, act globally. Why are we making ourselves smaller? Act globally, think globally. The internet is allowing us to have this right now. So why wouldn't you? So when I put together events, I'm not looking at it from the, oh, it's only for this group of people, because every man and every woman on this planet, they're going through relaunches.
Yeah.
They have, and in the Silicon Valley, as we've discussed already, it was a male dominated world. And I was, I remember coming home one day and I was thinking, I've completely lost the essence of who Hillary is. I am in a woman's body, but I am definitely the persona of a man. And
Yes.
that never works. And it didn't. And finally, after 10 years at Oracle, I had to leave. And I had my three little kids. And I'm like, it's time for me to take back me. And that is very similar to the relaunch effect, to being able to release, like, I was judging myself. I'm like, well, if I do this, what will people think? I've only known my life in this position. What
Yeah.
will I become? How will I pay my bills? How will I do all this? And when you can use the relaunch effect and really, tuning in, was a huge part of just like, I remember I would get in the car and I would turn on the music, right? And I
Yes.
would be like, okay, what's next for me? What's next for me? So yeah, I mean,
I love that.
it's a great period in the world right now to expand, to not shrink back because we're getting older, but to really look at it like, what is my growth potential?
Well, it takes courage, right, to relaunch yourself and to break the norm and to, like you said, how do I provide for my children and myself and, that lifestyle, which is courageous. And I don't think we give, like, that's your popping of the champagne, right? Of what
100%.
courage it takes to do that. So when you feel
I'm
stuck,
going to say one other quick thing, because it just came to me and I just want to make sure that your listeners get to hear it, is that it also takes confidence. And if you think about the word confidence, the Latin root fides is in there, confidence, it's fides. And that means faith in Latin. And if we look at faith over fear, and fear is something in the future that hasn't happened, faith is that unwavering knowing that it's going to happen. I also help people get past the fear and follow faith.
yeah, I think I've always had that, right? Just to go, I don't know where it came from, right? Maybe just my upbringing and having to, I just, I just know there's a natural knowing of this is what's next. I think that's why it's so like, I don't know. I've never not known, which is also awesome. If you
It's
can be in it to go, it's okay to not know. Maybe this is the true calling because now you don't know.
okay. And that's why I'm sure, you've had many coaches along the way. I have too. This is where, or a friend or a family member, they push you. They keep saying, it's like, well, what are you looking for? Why are you looking for? And it's amazing that when you're asked those questions and you've tuned in, so you're elevated at a higher level, your answers sometimes shock you. You're like, what?
Yes, yes,
Did I just
exactly.
say that? Like, did that come from me? Wow.
How will I do that? I don't even know, but that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
So for listeners who are feeling stuck and unsure what's next, what's one small playful challenge you can give them to start realigning with their highest self and their highest intention today?
I would literally go back to tune in. I would say every morning when you wake up, every morning, think about the intention for the day. Set yourself up for success. How many people get out of bed, they do their routine, they are kind of on automatic. And if you're on automatic and you're in the stuck zone, you're going to stay stuck, right? So
Yes.
first thing I do is, and I don't think you've even seen these, they're great. I have a deck that I created. They're truth or dare cards. And you can pick a truth for the day of what you're really going for, or you can dare yourself to be great in some area. And so giving yourself that intention, what is the intention that you're going for? And then looking at what's the song? What's your song of the day going to be? Right?
Yeah.
How are you going to be able to check where you are throughout the day? Ah, boom, pop yourself back up with your song. And so I really believe that the simplest way to success, and as you said, sometimes the easiest things make the most impact. We are winding up right now, the end of the year. And I have something that goes throughout the whole year, and it's called quantum your believe it board. Instead of a vision board, instead of a dream board, which I don't believe work. I do
Yeah.
something very different. I do something very different. And it's giving yourself that wherever you are in the year, that like almost like you're putting yourself into a charging station and you can just see yourself filling up. It just gives you the chance. I often say to people, and I talk about it in my book, Relaunch, Spark Your Heart to Ignite Your Life. It's the pause principle. We're going, going, going. We're driving so fast. We're like, revving the engine all the time. But when can you actually become creative? When can you actually get to that point where you're giving yourself the time to tune in? It's when you're pausing. It's when you're saying, and that's why put it on your calendar, tune in before every single meeting. And you see the results. I don't
Right.
even need to be like, and this is what's going to happen. You're going to notice it after the first meeting. And I've had the biggest skeptics like, oh, no. I'm like, just do it. Don't push back on me right now.
The homework. Just do what I say.
Thousands of these. Come on, this works. It works. So I always say my big tag is it's go time. It's go time. And it like this is it, and I've literally held my mom and my dad's hand as they passed on. There's you don't get a second chance. It's go time.
So what a delicious conversation. Hilary, how do people play with you? How do they find you? Give
So
us juicy.
best way is to literally, if you liked hearing about the Tune In tool, go to tuneinpowertool.com. And I've done a PDF, I've done a little video, so it just sinks in. Don't lose the momentum. And then you can always follow me on Instagram at Hilary DeCesare.
Awesome. So thank you so much. You dropped some serious wisdom bombs. And if you are ready to and fired up to relaunch with your 3HQ, right, and you know that you want to play, here's the deal, right? Don't keep this magic for yourself. Share Hilary with your friends, your colleagues, put in your newsletter. Somebody needs this information as much as you do. I'm all about like, who do you know? How can you share? Don't keep the secrets to yourself. Life's too short, right? And everyone needs a little Hilary in their life just to stay focused, to relaunch, recharge, and tune in. I love that. So make sure that you subscribe to Power Your Profits podcast. Never miss out on these game-changing conversations, right? You get great takeaways. Tag us on social media. We love hearing from you. Until next time, keep dreaming big, taking bold action, tune in, tap in, turn on, and own your greatness. We will see you soon, my little profit makers. And Hilary, thank you for being such a gift from God.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Power Your Profits podcast. Let these building blocks from today's most successful industry leaders equip you with the necessary resources and tools to finally establish the highly profitable business of your dreams. Want to hear more? Listen to more episodes at www.poweryourprofitspodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. Now is your time to rise to the top of your game. So be sure to catch our next episode. Until next time.